What is going on, everybody? What is going on, the Catch fam? My name is John Dawson, and in today's video, we are hopping in to our starts and sits for the tight end position for week 1 of 2022 fantasy football. If you guys do enjoy today's content, be sure to hit that like button on the way in, hit that subscribe button. Of course, if you are new to the channel, we put out free daily fantasy football content, and be sure to drop any comments, questions, concerns pertaining to the 2022 fantasy football season down below. Without further ado, let's hop into today's video. All right, Thursday night football, we've got the Bills at the Rams. I am starting Dawson Knox in this game. I really like this game script overall for the Bills. I know some fantasy managers out there are still a little bit worried about Knox as a whole, having the hand injury last season, but as a whole, on my end, I am completely confident in Dawson Knox as one of Josh Allen's favorite targets in the red zone. And after Dawson Knox got the bag, got a nice contract extension this past week, I'm even more confident in Dawson Knox having a very productive fantasy season. I think it's okay to believe that he might have some touchdown regression going into the season, but as a whole, I love him here in week 1 and what I expect to be a shootout. Outside of deeper leagues, I'm sitting Tyler HIGBEE this week. I think he's an okay start, full PPR, deeper leagues, but as a whole, I just don't see a crazy ceiling for him, even in what I think will be quite a shootout overall for the Bills and Rams in the first game of the 2022 season. At the end of the day, I think that ceiling lies more with the receiving room for the Rams, so I'll start Dawson Knox in week 1 and sit Tyler HIGBEE. All right, Eagles at Lions, moving into the 1 o'clock games. I'm starting my boy Dallas Goedert all day long. You guys know, if you follow the channel, that Dallas Goedert has been one of my favorite tight ends throughout the offseason. Moving into the season, I think he is going to have a very productive day against what I think could be an improved Lions defense, but still a Lions defense that will be easily exploited by this Eagles passing attack. I think Goddard's going to have a great day as a whole. Listen, as long as TJ Hawkinson is healthy this year, he is a start. He is another tight end who showed really good value overall through fantasy drafts this past offseason. So I like Hawkinson in this matchup. I like the game script overall in this matchup. I think the Lions are going to surprise a lot of people and show a really competitive game overall. So I think Goedert and Hawkinson are great starts moving into week 1. All right, Niners at Bears. Obviously, George Kittle is dealing with a little bit of an injury or groin injury at the moment. So of course we're starting George Kittle if you draft him. There's no doubt about it. But he's got an asterisk right now because we don't actually know if he's going to be able to suit up for week 1. So at the moment, in terms of the Niners tight ends, if Kittle is healthy, yeah, you're starting George Kittle all season long. If he's healthy, if he's not healthy, we are sitting the Niners tight ends. But at the end of the day, man, if Kittle is healthy, this is a great game script, a great defense for Kittle to go up against. On the flip side, I do like Cole Kmet moving in this game, a really hot name at the tight end position in the offseason for a lot of fantasy managers. I do think Kmet will put up a good stat line, especially in full PPR. I do want to emphasize that I'm still the biggest fan of Kmet in full PPR leagues. I think that he could definitely become a red zone target with Jimmy Graham gone from that offense, but I'm still a little bit worried until we see it and we really see this offense start to get moving. So I do think it's a little bit of a tough week for the Bears going up against the Niners in week 1, so maybe tamper your expectations, but I think overall Kmet will have a respectable fantasy stat line moving into week 1. All right, Steelers at Bengals. I'm starting Pat Freiermuth. I like this game script. Last year, the Bengals were really bad against the tight end position. If I'm not mistaken, 26 against the position as a whole. And overall, I just like this matchup. It's a nice, gritty divisional game, and I really think Freiermuth could be one of those nice security blanket tight ends for Mitchell Trubisky throughout the season. Really had a great rookie year as a whole. So I like Freiermuth. I think he's a good start. If he's your tight end 1, if you fade a tight end and he is your tight end 1, I think you should have some confidence, right, moving into week 1. I do think Freiermuth will have a good week as a whole. Listen, I was a fan of the addition of Hayden Hurst after the Bengals let CJ Uzomah walk in the offseason, but I'm still sitting Hayden Hurst moving into week 1 against the Steelers. As much as I like the Bengals offense, as much as I like that passing attack, I'm going to sit Hurst and kind of see how he's implemented into this offense before we do anything crazy. All right, Patriots at Dolphins. You guys know, if you follow the channel, that we are starting Hunter Henry in week 1. Listen, I'm a little bit worried about the Patriots offense, maybe outside of the run game moving into week 1. I'm just worried about how the coaching situation has looked in terms of their offensive coordinators, but at the end of the day, I like Henry. I think he is going to continue to be a top red zone target for our boy Mac and Cheese. So I think Henry's a really good start against the Dolphins in week 1, especially if you faded tight end as a whole. I would sit Mike Gesicki, another tight end who I've been a fan of for some time, but I just had that feeling, you know, you add Tyreek Hill to that offense, you add Ced Wilson, you've got Chase Edmonds as a receiving back. Listen, I still think Gesicki will be heavily involved within this offense, but we have to kind of tamper our expectations a little bit for Gesicki as a starting tight end. So I just want to see how that offense looks moving into week 1. I want to see how it's different under a new head coach with some added pieces before we go crazy and start Gesicki as a tight end 1. If you did fade tight end and he's your tight end 1, you could probably start him. If you're in a deeper league, you could start him, but I would tamper your overall expectations to what we've seen Mike Gesicki produce in fantasy over the last year or two. All right, Browns at Panthers. I'm sitting both tight ends in this game. Believe it or not, I'm sitting NJOKU and Tommy Tremble. There's just something about this game, man, especially for the Browns offense. I just am not a huge fan of really starting anyone this week. I just don't have the faith with Jacoby Brissett as the starting quarterback. I know NJOKU's been a popular late round tight end fantasy target for a lot of managers moving in the season, but I just want to see how things look with Jacoby Brissett as his starting quarterback, really before I start anyone who's not involved in the run game. So I'll sit David NJOKU. I actually think the Panthers defense is going to play all right. Turns to Tommy Tremble, right? We kind of want to see who Baker favorites at the tight end position. Tommy Tremble is your tight end 1 on paper, but we really, once again, we just want to see how do the Panthers look with Baker Mayfield as he's starting quarterback. It's very likely a tight end can step up and be fantasy relevant. But going into week 1, we're going to sit Tommy Tremble, and I would sit NJOKU as well. All right, Colts at Texans. This is another game. You know, the tight end is just not at a premium in this game, right? I would sit Mo Alley Cox. I really do think Matt Ryan could find a tight end that he likes to target on this team. You've got some youthful guys there. You got a rookie or two, right? But I would probably sit Mo Alley Cox, although historically he has been a nice red zone option. We just want to see how the Colts roll out in week 1. Listen, it's a bad defense, so it's likely a tight end scores potentially, but I would still sit Mo Alley Cox. Outside of deeper leagues, and I mean really deep leagues, he's not on any fantasy rosters anyways. And Brevin Jordan has kind of been a popular, you know, name in terms of late round selections in some fantasy leagues, mainly best ball and underdog drafts though. So I don't think Brevin Jordan's on a lot of rosters out there outside of really deep leagues. If you are in a deep enough league, I think you could roll the dice, but overall, I think most fantasy managers out there, we're going to set Brevin Jordan moving into week 1. All right, Saints at Falcons. Listen, I've got Taysom Hill as a sit, and that's your tight end 1 on paper for the Saints right now. But I don't know, man. Going up against this Falcons defense, I think Taysom Hill could actually have a decent day. So I've got an asterisk next to him. I mean, if you're just in a completely awful position at tight end for whatever reason, or if you're in a 14-team league, a 16, 18, or 20, and there's just nothing hanging around, you completely fumbled the position, I don't know, man. I think Taysom Hill, for those of you out there who don't have a starter right now that you believe in, could be a decent option moving into week 1, but we really ultimately want to sit back and see how the Saints utilize Taysom Hill, kind of that Swiss Army knife type player. So I'm not completely confident, but in the right situation, I do think he could be a decent start this week. Overall, if you drafted Kyle Pitts, you're starting him, even if it's not the best matchup. I think that Saints defense will be really good this year. But at the end of the day, man, if you spent that draft capital all season long, barring any injury, Kyle Pitts is in your starting lineup, no question about it. The Ravens at Jets, you're starting Mark Andrews, right? We just talked about Kyle Pitts. Same with Mark Andrews, man. If you spent that draft capital, there is no question. Week in and week out, you are starting Mark Andrews on a weekly basis. Don't get smart. Don't overthink it. I don't think anyone's going to. Mark Andrews on your fantasy roster. He's in your starting lineup. I would set CJ Uzomah outside of really, really deep leagues. He could maybe consider it, but I don't like this matchup. I don't like it whatsoever. You know, you got Joe Flacco at quarterback, right? I would set Uzomah moving into week 1. I would set any of the Jets tight ends. I know there's been 1 or 2 other names floating around, especially since Flacco has been the primary quarterback. I just don't like this game script. It's possible someone produces, but until we really see it on the field, we don't want to get smart and start a Jets tight end moving into week 1. All right, Jags at Commanders. I would sit Evan Engram and I would sit Logan Thomas. This is another situation outside of deep leagues, maybe a triple flex league, whatever, that you're sitting both these guys, right? They're probably not on fantasy rosters, but I do have an asterisk next to Evan Engram because I do think he's a player we should watch who could potentially become a really nice target overall for Trevor Lawrence. And I think it's a good matchup going up against the Commanders, who had a really bad secondary and we're decent against the tight end position, but at the end of the day, man, not too great. So I like Engram in the right situation potentially, but I wouldn't go crazy and, you know, go dropping players to pick up Engram. And really, you know, I have Logan Thomas as a sit, but we know that Thomas can be extremely productive from a fantasy standpoint when he is healthy. So I would also keep an eye on Logan Thomas, quite frankly. This is a matchup throughout the week that I've liked in terms of being a good matchup to exploit at different positions, because I think both these defenses are not going to show up. So these might not be the best teams overall on paper, maybe not the best teams in terms of real actual football, but I do think these two teams could, against the right defenses and in the right matchups throughout the season, have some productive players. But nonetheless, moving into week 1, I think we're sitting both these players, Evan Engram and Logan Thomas. Packers at Vikings. Listen, this was a tough one for me. I almost put Robert Tonyan as a start, but at the moment, and really the same for Irv Smith, I do like this matchup, right? I think this is going to be a fun little divisional shootout in week 1. I do think that the Vikings are going to throw the ball more this year, so I think that Irv Smith, like many fantasy managers in the offseason, I think he's going to have a decent year overall as long as he stays healthy. And Robert Tonyan, on the flip side, I think as long as he stays healthy, is going to be a favorite target for Aaron Rodgers as well. So I like both these tight ends, but just something about it, as much as I like this matchup and the situation both these guys are in, both of them are coming off injury, and I want to see it happen on the field first before I start either of these guys. But in the right league, the right format, in a deep enough league, they're perfectly fine starts. Overall, as a whole, I don't think they need to be in starting lineups moving into week 1. All right, Giants at Titans. This is another game where we're sitting both tight ends, right? I don't think that any of the Giants tight ends are going to be starters here in week 1. And I'm not crazy about this offense. I mean, I think it could definitely improve. And I mean, listen, there's some pieces there that could come together, but overall, I think we sit the tight end position. And listen, I know Austin Hooper has been kind of floating around in deeper leagues or underdog drafts and things like that. And listen, I'm not completely against the potential of Austin Hooper on the Titans, but I'm not really going to roll the dice. I don't even really like this move in deeper leagues, to be honest with you. It could definitely happen, but overall, at the end of the day, man, I'm just not crazy about this matchup. I'm sitting both the Giants and the Titans tight ends moving into week 1. All right, Raiders at Chargers. Listen, I think Darren Waller, of course, if you drafted him, I mean, what else is there to say, right? You're starting Darren Waller. If he's on your roster, he's in your lineup as long as he's listed as healthy. And at the moment, it looks like he is going to be listed as healthy. And I think that's a great thing, man. I want to see Darren Waller healthy and play a very long season, have a productive season. I think he's going to be a great piece of this offense, a nice security blanket for Derek Carr as a whole. It's a good matchup against the Chargers. It's going to be a shootout. It's going to be a fun game. So I love Darren Waller this week. And listen, I would start Gerald Everett if he is only tight end on your team, if you're in the right situation in the deeper league. I like Gerald Everett simply because I do really like this matchup, and I really believe in the Chargers offense. I really believe in them with Justin Herbert moving into his junior year. Man, I would put Gerald Everett as a starter in the right situation based off of the fact that he's on the Chargers offense, and it's a good matchup overall. So I like Waller this week, and I like Everett moving into week 1. All right, Chiefs at Cardinals is going to be a fun game, man. Another shootout, a high-scoring affair. So obviously, if you drafted KELCE, this is the first tight end off of the board in about 99% of fantasy leagues. Maybe Mark Andrews went first, but KELCE's in your lineup. There's no question about it. Week in and week out, this is someone that we're just going to simply graze over. If KELCE is healthy, is in your lineup, point blank period, right? Zach Ertz has an asterisk because at the moment he's still dealing with an injury. So if Ertz is healthy, you're probably starting him. He's more than likely your tight end 1. For a lot of fantasy managers out there who drafted 2-3 weeks ago, you may have drafted Zach Ertz as a tight end 1, which at the moment he wasn't dealing with the injury. So if he's your tight end 1 and he's listed as healthy, you start him. If he's not listed as healthy, I say we set the Cardinals tight ends, although I like the matchup, and Trey McBride could get kind of interesting. Let's just keep an eye on Trey McBride and what the Cardinals do at the tight end position if Zach Ertz does not play. But overall, if Ertz is listed as healthy, you're starting him. And KELCE, I mean, come on, no brainer. KELCE's in your lineup, right? At Bucks at Cowboys, man, I am sitting the Buccaneers tight ends. I don't like this tight end room. I don't like this tight end situation whatsoever. I think it's going to be a complete headache from a fantasy standpoint. You're going to see a lot of different guys rotate. A lot of different guys are going to score touchdowns, have some productive moments throughout the season. Tom Brady is going to make anyone who catches the football better on his football team, but there's just not someone that I can point at moving into week 1 and say that is who you should start. And I really don't think it's going to be that way throughout the season, although if it changes, I'll be happy. But week 1, I'm not starting a Buccaneers tight end, even in deeper leagues. In terms of Dalton Schultz, yeah, you're starting Dalton Schultz, man. I mean, really an underrated tight end last year, underrated even going into this season. I think that Schultz is going to have a good game. This is the type of matchup that he should benefit from. So I love Schultz as a starter. And obviously, if you spent that draft capital on him, you're starting him in your starting lineup, no question about it. All right, last game of the week, we got the Broncos at Seahawks Monday Night Football. You're starting my boy Alberto, right? If he's on your squad, man, listen, if he's your tight end too, I don't think you need to do anything crazy. If you faded tight end and this is your starter, man, do I like this matchup against the Seahawks. I mean, basically, I don't think there's been a single set for the Broncos offense this week. This game script, this matchup overall is just phenomenal for the Broncos. So I do think Alberto is a really good start, even though, you know, really my thing with Alberto is that I wanted to see it happen really before I bought into the hype. But at the end of the day, man, if you did go out and draft him, like, I love this matchup. I think he's a great start overall. Listen, I don't think Noah Fant's going to have an awful season by any means. I actually think Noah Fant's going to be relatively productive, and someone who's been drafted a little bit higher, you know, the past 2 years or so in fantasy leagues, and really this year just got forgotten about because Russell Wilson's not his quarterback and he moves to a really bad offense. But I think at the end of the day, he's going to be probably one of the more productive players from a fantasy standpoint on the Seahawks roster. But here in week one, I don't like the game script going up against the Broncos whatsoever. So I would sit Noah Fant this week unless you're in a deeper league and he's your tight end one. Then, you know, his ceiling is capped, but I do think he will get enough targets to maybe put up a respectable fantasy stat line, but I just don't like the game script. So in most leagues, you're sitting Noah Fant. Maybe in a deeper league, he's an okay start, but the key word there is okay as we move into week one. And that'll do it for today's video. There are your starts and sits for week one of the 2022 fantasy football season at the tight end position. If you guys have any comments, questions, concerns pertaining to the 2022 fantasy football season, drop them down below. I will get back to you as soon as I can be about tight ends, running backs, receivers, defenses, kickers, quarterbacks, whatever it is. I got you guys. Be sure to hit that like button on the way out and hit that subscribe button if you are new to the channel. Come join the Catch family. We put out free daily fantasy football content. We are here to help you dominate your fantasy football season. With that, I'll say thank you guys so much for watching and or listening. And remember, you saw it here on the Catch.